during a press conference in July 1952. However, there have remained a percentage of this total of all UFO reports received by the Air Force, about 20% of the reports that have come from credible observers of relatively incredible things. We keep on being concerned about them. In warping, twisting, and changing the Arnold incident, the writers of saucer lore haven't been content to confine themselves to the incident itself. They have dragged in the crashed Marine Corps' C-46. They intimate that the same flying saucers that Arnold saw shot down the C-46 grabbed up the bodies of the passengers and crew and now have them pickled at the University of Venus Medical School. As proof, they apply the same illogical reasoning that they apply to most everything. The military never released photos of the bodies of the dead men, therefore there were no bodies. There were photographs, and there were bodies. In consideration of the families of air crewmen and passengers, photos of air crashes showing dead bodies are never released. Arnold himself seems to be the reason for a lot of the excitement that heralded flying saucers. Stories of odd incidents that occur in this world are continually being reported by newspapers, but never on the scale of the first UFO report. Occasional stories of the Himalayan snowmen or the Malayan monsters rate only a few inches or a column on the back pages of newspapers. Arnold's story, if it didn't make the headlines, at least made the front page. I had the reason for this explained to me one day when I was investigating a series of UFO reports in California in the spring of 1952. I was making my headquarters at an air base where a fighter bomber wing was stationed. Through a mutual friend, I met one of the fighter bomber pilots who had known Arnold. In civilian life, the pilot was a newspaper reporter and had worked on the original Arnold story. He told me that when the story first broke, all the newspaper editors in the area were thoroughly convinced that the incident was a hoax, and that they intended to write the story as such. The more they dug into the facts, however, and into Arnold's reputation, the more it appeared that he was telling the truth. Besides having an unquestionable character, he was an excellent mountain pilot, and mountain pilots are a breed of men who know every nook and cranny of the mountains in their area. The most fantastic part of Arnold's story had been the 1,700 miles per hour speed computed from Arnold's timing the objects between two landmarks. When Arnold told us how he computed the speed, my chance acquaintance told me, we all put a lot of faith in his story. He went on to say that when the editors found out that they were wrong about the hoax, they did a complete about-face and were very much impressed by the story. This enthusiasm spread, and since the Air Force so quickly denied ownership of the objects, all of the facts built up into a story so unique that papers all over the world gave it front-page space. There was an old theory that maybe Arnold had seen wind whipping snow along the mountain ridges, so I asked about this. I got a flat impossible. My expert on the early Arnold era said, "I've lived in the Pacific Northwest many years and have flown in the area for hundreds of hours. It's impossible to get powder snow low in the mountains in June. Personally, I believe Arnold saw it from this earth." He went on to tell me about two other very similar sightings that had happened the day after Arnold saw the 9 discs. He knew the people who made these sightings and said that they weren't the kind to go off half-cocked. He offered to get a T-6 and fly me up to Boise to talk to them, since they had never made a report to the military, but I had to return to Dayton, so I declined. Within a few days of Arnold's sighting, others began to come in. On June 28, an Air Force pilot in an F-51 was flying near Lake Mead, Nevada, when he saw a formation of 5 or 6 circular objects off his right wing. This was about 3:15 in the afternoon. That night at 9:20, 4 Air Force officers, 2 pilots and 2 intelligence officers from Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama, saw a bright light traveling across the sky. It was first seen just above the horizon, and as it traveled toward the observers, it zigzagged, with bursts of high speed. When it was directly overhead, it made a sharp 90-degree turn and was lost from view as it traveled south. Other reports came in. In Milwaukee, a lady saw 10 go over her house, like blue blazes, heading south. A school bus driver in Clarion, Iowa, saw an object streak across the sky. In a few seconds, 12 more followed the first one. White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico chalked up the first of the many sightings that this location would produce when several people riding in an automobile saw a pulsating light travel from horizon to horizon in 30 seconds. A Chicago housewife saw one with legs. The week of July 4, 1947, set a record for reports that was not broken until 1952. The center of activity was the Portland, Oregon area. At 11 o'clock a.m., a carload of people driving near Redmond saw 4 disc-shaped objects streaking past Mount Jefferson. At 1:05 p.m., a policeman was in the parking lot behind the Portland City Police headquarters when he noticed some pigeons suddenly began to flutter around as if they were scared. He looked up and saw 5 large disc-shaped objects, 2 going south and 3 going east. They were traveling at a high rate of speed and seemed to be oscillating about their lateral axis. Minutes later, 2 other policemen, both ex-pilots, reported 3 of the same things flying in trail. Before long, the Harbor Patrol called into headquarters. A crew of 4 patrolmen had seen 3 to 6 of the discs, shaped like chrome hubcaps, traveling very fast. They also oscillated as they flew. Then the citizens of Portland began to see them. A man saw 1 going east and 2 going north. At 4:30, a woman called in and had just seen one that looked like a new dime flipping around. Another man reported 2, 1 going southeast, 1 northeast. From Milwaukee, Oregon, 3 were reported going northwest. In Vancouver, Washington, sheriff's deputies saw 20 to 30. The first photo was taken on July 4th in Seattle. After much publicity, it turned out to be a weather balloon. That night, a United Airlines crew flying near Emmett, Idaho, saw 5. The pilot's report read, 5 somethings, which were thin and smooth on the bottom and rough appearing on top, were seen silhouetted against the sunset shortly after the plane took off from Boise at 8:04 p.m. We saw them clearly. We followed them in a northeasterly direction for about 45 miles. They finally disappeared. We were unable to tell whether they outsped us or disintegrated. We can't say whether they were smear-like oval or anything else, but whatever they were not aircraft, clouds, or smoke. Civilians did not have a corner on the market. On July 6th, a staff sergeant in Birmingham, Alabama saw several dim glowing lights speeding across the sky and photographed one of them. Also on the 6th, the crew of an Air Force B-25 saw a bright, disc-shaped object low at 9 o'clock. This is one of the few reports of an object lower than the aircraft. At Fairfield-Suisun Air Force Base in California, a pilot saw something travel 3/4 of the way across the sky in a few seconds. It, too, was oscillating on its lateral axis. According to the old hands at ATIC, The first sighting that really made the Air Force take a deep interest in UFOs occurred on July 8th at Muroc Air Base, now Edwards Air Force Base, the super-secret Air Force Test Center in the Mojave Desert of California. At 10:10 a.m., a test pilot was running up the engine of the then-new XP-84 in preparation for a test flight. He happened to look up, and to the north he saw what first appeared to be a weather balloon traveling in a westerly direction. After watching it a few seconds, he changed his mind. He had been briefed on the high-altitude winds, and the object he saw was going against the wind. Had it been the size of a normal aircraft, the test pilot estimated that it would have been at 10,000 to 12,000 feet and traveling 200 to 225 miles per hour. He described the object as being spherically shaped and yellowish white in color. 10 minutes before this, several other officers. They were similar, except they had more of a silver color. They were also heading in a westerly direction. 2 hours later, a crew of technicians on Rogers Dry Lake, adjacent to Muroc Air Base, observed another UFO. Their report went as follows. On the 8th of July, 1947, at 11:50, we were sitting in an observation truck located in Area Number 3, Rogers Dry Lake. We were gazing upward toward a formation of two P-82s and an A-26 aircraft flying at 20,000 feet. They were preparing to carry out a seat ejection experiment. We observed a round object, white aluminum color, which at first resembled a parachute canopy. Our first impression was that a premature ejection of the seat and dummy had occurred, but this was not the case. The object was lower than 20,000 feet and was falling at 3 times the rate observed for the test parachute, which ejected 30 seconds after we first saw the object. As the object fell, it drifted slightly north of due west against the prevailing wind. The speed, horizontal motion, could not be determined, but it appeared to be slower than the maximum velocity F-80 aircraft. As this object descended through a low enough level to permit observation of its lateral silhouette, it presented a distinct oval-shaped outline with 2 projections on the upper surface which might have been thick fins or knobs. These crossed each other at intervals, suggesting either rotation or oscillation of slow type. No smoke, flames, propeller arcs, engine noise, or other plausible or visible means of propulsion were noted. The color was silver, resembling an aluminum-painted fabric, and did not appear as dense as a parachute canopy. When the object dropped to a level such that it came into line of vision of the mountaintops, it was lost to the vision of the observers. It is estimated that the object was in sight about 90 seconds. Of the 5 people sitting in the observation truck, 4 observed this object. The following is our opinion about this object. It was man-made, as evidenced by the outline and functional appearance. Seeing this was not a hallucination or other fancies of sense. Exactly 4 hours later,